Creativity is such a gift. It blows my mind that with just one idea, we can build whole worlds out of nothing. But there's a quieter, less glamorous side that people don't really talk about as much. And that's the loneliness that comes with creativity. On one hand, it can feel incredible to be fully in your zone, writing, doing photography, designing, whatever your thing is. But on the other, it can leave you feeling kind of isolated or even invisible and behind on life while the rest of the world seems to go about their business. In today's episode, I'm exploring why so many creatives specifically struggle with loneliness, but more than that, what to do about it and how it can actually be a hidden strength to build resilience and fuel your greatest work yet. And if you're hearing this right now and you're like, oh my God, that's me. I'm just a artsy little shadow goblin cosplaying as an adult. Sort of. Well, welcome to the party. I got you. And by the end of this episode, you'll look at loneliness in a whole new light. If you are not an artsy little shadow goblin, maybe you have someone important in your life that is. And this will help you understand them better. Cue the music.
Hey there, I'm Melody Bose, your host of Jeans with a Blazer, a podcast about rewriting the rules of work and life.
So, this is so real for me, and those little pangs of loneliness are something that I've been familiar with for as long as I can remember. Growing up, my imagination was kind of my safe space, and I could spend hours getting lost in books or movies or even just my own daydreams, writing little stories and just escaping into them. And because I was shy, I didn't really come out of my shell until like high school. I always felt a little different. Maybe a little too sensitive or just kind of weird. And while creativity gave me comfort and an outlet to express myself, stepping back into the real world could feel really overwhelming. But something interesting happened as I got older and I started growing into my career. I realized that what once made me feel too much was actually my superpower. And the way I saw the world differently and the way I could pick up on nuances and how I bloomed those ideas that I would get lost in, those are the exact traits that helped me thrive creatively. And they were the thing that set me apart. And that's when it clicked. The very thing that can make us feel lonely as a creative could also be the thing that makes our work resonate so deeply with others. But naturally, it doesn't come without its challenges. We know that. And it almost makes me wonder if maybe there's a cost to dreaming so big or having such an outrageous imagination. And that's just the trade off. While you let that percolate, let's talk through some of those things that contribute to those feelings of loneliness. And this episode isn't going to be a downer, it's going to be in our feels in like a nostalgic way. Okay, let's get into it. Okay, first things first, isolation in the work as a whole. Creative work is often a solo endeavor just by the very nature of it. Yes, you can work on creative teams and projects with other people, but you know what I mean. When you're in the zone and you're like cranking out wisdom on a Word doc or synthesizing music, the world just kind of falls away and it's only you. And in a way, creativity kind of demands that solitude. And for those long stretches of alone time, that's fuel for your focus and imagination. But yeah, you might spend all day in your own head working on a project and realize you haven't spoken to another human being since the morning or yesterday. You need to live on that island to do your creative thing, but living on it can get awfully lonely. The trick is learning how to build bridges back to the mainland. And that can be as simple as FaceTiming a friend when you have a break running a mundane errand after a long day in the studio, or working from a coffee shop once in a while. So you're just surrounded by some energy and some semblance of life. So you don't forget what that is. Or sending a voice note. Okay. I love voice notes because there's no pressure to be on like a live call. You can just listen to it when you have the time and just carry out, like, you can carry out a conversation over the course of like a few days. So it feels like you're in constant contact. And case in point, you don't have to give up living on the island. And in some cases, you shouldn't. Just make sure there's a little boat waiting to bring you back whenever you need that connection. Oh, also, this isn't to say that non-creative people don't feel loneliness. No, loneliness is a totally human thing and everyone bumps into it at some point. But for creatives, it shows up in these really specific ways that tied directly to how we work and kind of how we see the world. So, like, your accountant cousin might feel lonely if they move to a new city and don't know anyone yet. I mean, wouldn't we all? But for a painter or a designer, loneliness might hit while they're doing the thing that they love the most and sitting in the studio, just surrounded by their own ideas. Same feeling, just a different context. That's what makes the creative version of loneliness a little unique and why I think it deserves its own conversation. Okay, so another layer to this being on an island thing that I really need to mention. This is for the ones who are out there who do recognize the need to reconnect, but have two modes when it comes to texting their friends back. Okay, either you text back within 0.45 seconds or 3 to 5 business days, no in between. And if you've ever had a friend wonder why you don't respond to text for days or why you suddenly vanish into your own little bubble, it's probably not because you don't care. Hopefully you do. If you don't, then come on, be kind. But for creatives, communication often gets tangled up with a sense of accomplishment. We tell ourselves, I'll reply once I finish this draft, or I'll call back after I edit this video. The problem is the finish line keeps moving. The project takes longer, the idea shifts, or another task pops up for my ADHD people. You know what I'm talking about. And before you know it, it's Friday. You're made of like 90% dry shampoo at this point, and your good intentions for composing just the most simple text back is, that exited stage left a long, long time ago. And at an even deeper level, we sometimes equate worthiness of connection with productivity. For example, it's like we subconsciously think, I don't deserve to show up until I have something to show for myself. So we delay responding, waiting until we've earned it by accomplishing something. It's not malicious, but it can definitely strain relationships and add to the cycle of loneliness. Because while we're holding out for that perfect moment of arrival, our connections are slipping further and further away. Don't worry. That sounds really dramatic. Oh, and side note, this shouldn't be used as an excuse to ghost, but that is a whole other conversation. I will not get into that. We're just talking about friendships here. Anyway, how to deal with this. I'm just going to go ahead and rip off the band-aid. Sometimes it means some of your friendships just won't be compatible with this if this is the way you are. I absolutely have been there and it is painful, but if someone decides that they need more communication from you in your friendship than you can provide, they're simply putting their needs first, and you have to respect that. However, the realest thing you can do is just be super upfront from the beginning as early as possible. Like, hey, if I don't respond to you right away, please don't take it personally. Don't think I don't care about you, but also show up in other ways. So I have some friends where we'll communicate just, for months just through memes on Instagram. And then once in a blue moon, we'll get on a call and we'll yap for like 2 hours. And it is the most life-giving thing in the world. Now, you could also have a code word with your friend group or just an individual friend where if they were to text you, it means it's an emergency and they really need you to respond. Next up, comparison culture. All right, another reason why creatives can feel so lonely is comparison culture, aka the illusion that is social media. Okay, so social media, our double-edged sword, it does let us share our work and connect with fellow creators, but it can also magnify loneliness like pouring salt on a wound. Scrolling through TikTok or Instagram, it looks like everyone else is thriving, collaborating, enjoying life in vibrant communities. Meanwhile, you're just sitting at home feeling like a little blob, but you're not a little blob. And I'm sure you know this, but sometimes we just need a reminder that social media is a highlight reel. People share their best moments, not their lonely 2 a.m. struggles, not their ugly cries, or when they're doing mundane things like deep cleaning their fridge. Who wants to see that? Gross. But it's so easy to get lost in the sauce and forget that. And when you do, you start believing the illusion that everyone else is connected except for me. That belief can only deepen a creative's loneliness and discourages from reaching out because you assume nobody else could possibly relate to you. The good news is everyone is boring most of the time. So you can still have a very exciting and fulfilled life where you're doing lots of things if that's your thing. But there's a huge part of that where there's not a whole lot going on. Okay, like when you're sleeping or you're just scrolling or doing work, whatever. Next is the vulnerability of sharing your work. So to create is to put a piece of yourself out into the world. And that in itself is extremely vulnerable. Whether you're posting a painting or publishing a story or releasing a song, you're essentially saying, Here is something personal I made. I hope you like it. It's like when you're a little kid and you draw a picture and you bring it to your mom and you're like, look at this thing that I did. Do you want to put it on the fridge? I feel like that's how we are with our work. We're kind of hoping for that sense of validation, even if we're just excited to be there, even if we would do it with no audience, right? So when we put that piece of art out in the world, sometimes you're met with silence or even more horrifying rejection. And that hurts. When your work isn't acknowledged or it's dismissed, it feels like a deep rejection. And over time, the fear of that void can make you hesitate just to even share at all, which only reinforces that feeling of isolation. Guys, it's a tough cycle. You need feedback in order to improve and connection around your art because you create it part for yourself, maybe part for the world, but reaching out for it risks pain and that can send you spiraling back into your shell. Okay. Pause. If you still want to share your work, there are some things you can do that make it not so scary. Okay, first, share it in a safe space first. So instead of just throwing your work out into the wolves, sometimes that's not really possible because if you're doing something creative for work, you might not be able to get that safe space feedback. So this only works on occasion. But in the case of creating a passion project or passion creativity pieces, instead of throwing your work into the internet void right away or hitting publish, start with small and trusted circles. So a group chat of creative friends, a critique partner, or even a private online forum like on Discord where people get quote unquote your medium. Those spaces can give you honest but supportive feedback, which makes it way easier to build that muscle of sharing publicly. The world needs more of your stuff. Please, I beg you, do it. Share it in a safe space first if that works for you. Next, reframe your feedback as data, not identity. So when you put your work out there, remind yourself that the response or the lack of it isn't a verdict on you, it's information. Silence, that's data. Rejection, data. It might sting, but it doesn't mean you're unworthy. No, separating your identity from the outcome helps you keep sharing without collapsing every response into they don't like me and, curling up into our inner child and feeling rejected. No, we don't need to do that. Okay. Next, we can create a buffer ritual. If you develop a personal ritual for after you hit publish or share, maybe that looks like going for a walk or texting a friend or literally closing your laptop for an hour. This keeps you from hovering over likes or comments or downloads, and it lets you separate your creative act, which you can control, from the response, which you can't control. Maybe that's a little difficult for some creatives because some creatives are also control freaks, but you cannot control the outcome. You can only control yourself and your immediate environment. Okay, next challenge, next struggle, the identity trap. All right, so I've struggled with this many times, but for many creatives, work isn't just work, it's identity. I am my art. And while that sounds really beautiful and poetic, it's also kind of dangerous. Hear me out. If your entire sense of self is tied to your output, then downtime feels like a failure. Huh, that gave me chills. I have thought for so long that I need to earn rest and earn relaxation. No, we're not here for that. That's not what we're doing. That's not what you're doing. So, taking a break or experimenting or doing something else that's not your creative work or passion can simply feel like a wasted time. And again, no, we're not here for that. The boundary between who you are and what you produce collapses, and suddenly the rejection of your work feels like a rejection of you. It's all cyclical. So, this collapse of identity intensifies loneliness because it leaves no room for connection outside of productivity. When you become your work, who are you? Have you ever been working in a job and then lost that job and it was your life because you poured every single thing into it and then you question who you are and like what you even like? The same thing can happen with your creative work, and you almost need to separate yourself from that a little bit. Like, it's so easy to get attached and married to your work because you're so passionate about it, but you also have to consider that when you do create it, it becomes its own being, its own thing with its own personality that other people can look at and judge and accept and feel joy and other things out of. So just remember that. So if you find yourself asking, who am I when I'm not creating? If you don't know, loneliness fills that space. So finding ways to root your identity in more than just your creative output, like relationships, values, experiences, that is vital for breaking free of this trap that we have painted ourselves into a corner of. So, one way you can do that is to redefine success beyond your output. So, instead of measuring your worth only by what you've produced lately, start tracking the progress behind it too. Did you show up to the page? Did you experiment? Did you rest so that you could come back sharper tomorrow? These counts as wins. Celebrate them. I've said this in previous podcasts, but celebrate those wins, every little thing that you're doing outside of what you've created around your identity. Another thing is you can create roles outside of the artist or the creative. Remind yourself that you are more than your work. I am here to tell you right now, you are so much more than your work and your output. You might also be a friend, a sibling, a runner, a plant parent, or the person who makes a mean frittata. Okay. So actively investing in these roles, even in the smallest ways, gives you multiple layers to yourself to root into. So if you do feel rejection in your art, it doesn't feel like a rejection of your entire self. Another thing we can do to break through this is to schedule non-output time. Okay, build in time where the goal is to not create anything. Nothing, not a single tangible thing. Maybe it's sketching without posting, journaling with no pressure, or going to a museum just to enjoy, not to research. It retrains your brain to see value in experiences that have nothing to do with your work. Okay, and finally, last challenge, there's the fact that creative work doesn't stop once your day is over. If you do this professionally, even if you don't do anything creative professionally, but you are creative at heart, it doesn't just stop when you say stop. The brain is always on. Ideas pop up in the shower, in the grocery line while you're trying to fall asleep. And this constant ideation, it is a blessing, but it is also a curse. Because when your brain never clocks out, you're always half in, half out, and never fully resting, never fully connecting. And that can create a mental hum that can erode joy and deepen those feelings of loneliness and isolation. Because even in social settings, you might feel distant, distracted, or guilty for not working. Who's been there? Raise 10 hands. That's what I'm doing. So, without these little rituals, these things that we do to end the workday, however you want to define that as a creative, it's easy to feel like you're carrying your studio or your laptop in your head everywhere you go. And that always on energy leaves little room for connection or play or fun, which is what life is all about, having fun. And that can amplify loneliness even more. We don't want that. So, one way to combat this is to capture ideas and then let them go, like little Pokemon. So, one would think that the easiest solution to this is to create a shutdown ritual, a little moment of self care, but that is way too obvious. We can do better than that. One thing you can do is to keep a brain dump notebook by your bed in your bag or in a voice memo app. And when an idea pops up at the grocery store or 11:59 p.m., jot it down and then give yourself permission to release it. Release it like the free bird that it is. That way you don't lose your spark or stay stuck in work mode. Even if it doesn't completely let go of your mind, you making that conscious decision helps you reclaim that power. So I came up with it, now I release it. But it's still there if you want to go back to it. That's key. Another way you can handle this is to make social time sacred. So, if you struggle to be present with people because your brain is constantly buzzing with ideas, try treating social time like part of your creative practice. Hear me out. Okay. Think of it like you're refueling your imagination. When you reframe it as this is productive time too, it eases the guilt of not working and lets you connect more fully. Now, if you're an introvert and I say social time and you're like, oh my God, I want to run for the hills, I don't mean like going out to a bar with, 100 million people. It could be connecting with someone who you really care about, a partner, a friend, a sibling, just anyone close in your life that you're intentionally present with. Another way to combat this is schedule true off time blocks. I want you to put literal no work blocks on your calendar or whatever you use to stay organized, even if it's just for an hour. So knowing that you've given yourself official permission to rest helps stop the spiral of I need to be working right now. And treating downtime as scheduled time helps legitimize it. Do you see the trick that we're playing? We're emotionally gaslighting ourselves, telling ourselves that we need to take a break and then adding that to our calendar as a meeting. And then we trick our brains into being like, oh, yes, I need to do this. Humans are weird. All right, so in addition to all of these challenges that I came up with. I wanted to know what you guys thought. So, on my personal Instagram story, I asked, what is the loneliest thing about being a creative? And I wanted to share some of those responses. So, some names have been changed for anonymity. Some names have been changed for anonymity. You know what I mean. Chrissy Laurie said, oftentimes, especially within the organization I work for, other people take credit for my ideas. Girl, I've been there. And to that I say, it stings when it happens, and there's honestly no real way to prevent that. But if you look at it as a way of kind of like a validation that you have ideas that are worth taking, right? The whole imitation is the best form of flattery thing. And if you keep growing in your craft, they will always be one step behind you, okay? They won't ever be where you are, just where you've been. And that's pretty cool. Adam Blinds said, having friends or loved ones that don't see the value of being a creative. And this feeling of just being misunderstood as a creative is so real. Sometimes the ones that we expect to get it the most, the ones closest to us, don't always see our vision. And when we want to be seen and we want to be heard by those important people in our lives, it can feel like a complete just let down, even if you're surrounded by people who mean the absolute best. And it's not that they don't care, they just operate on a different wavelength, and you're craving support from communities who vibrate at that same frequency. It's kind of like being on a radio station where you like all kinds of music, but sometimes you like rock and roll, sometimes you like the oldies but goodies, or, Lil Kim. But anyway, when you keep showing up and being good at what you do, the value of what you create speaks for itself. So, having that support system in different areas like online communities or other friendship groups or colleagues can be super, super helpful. But you can also gently teach the people in your life how to be on your wavelength. They don't necessarily have to understand what you do, but they can still appreciate it as an extension of you. And you can do that by sharing little bits of your process in a language that they understand. So explain why you light up about certain things, or equate it to, you're creative, use metaphors, use ways to connect what you do to things that they like maybe sports or something. I don't know. You could also invite them into your world, whether that's showing them your art or your writings or bringing them to a gallery or something. They may never fully live on your wavelength, but giving them a peek helps you feel, one, less alone, and two, it helps them feel more connected to you. They just might not know how. All right, so one more. Callie Alley said, the constant cycle of being excited about an idea, then doubting it, then getting excited again, and doing all of that alone. That is one of the loneliest things of being a creative, she says. So listen, our minds are constantly overflowing with new ideas, searching for deeper meanings. And we run through the process of idea to execution like we're training for a 5K. All right. I feel like sometimes that is just the life cycle of the idea process. And we only learn from doing, right? Doing and acting on those ideas. Sometimes they turn out great. Sometimes they flop. But I almost see it as building blocks. So an old idea that you have might totally evolve over time through your experiences to the point where the first version of that might not even be recognizable. But maybe you had to go through that exhausting cycle just to get there. All right. One final thing I'll leave you with is your biggest strength can come from your solitude. And while I totally get that it may be lonely to go through those motions, every single time you push through, you're not just making art, you're shaping yourself into someone who can carry those ideas further than you ever thought possible. Thanks for hanging out. I'll see you guys soon.
That's a wrap on this episode of Jeans with a Blazer. If today's conversation gave you something to think about, a mindset shift, or just the push you needed, do me a favor. Subscribe to the podcast so you never miss an episode. Leave a review wherever you enjoy your podcasts. It helps more people find it, and it keeps these conversations going. And I love hearing from you. Follow at Jeans with a Blazer and tag me with your biggest takeaways, your latest wins, or just tell me what topics you want to hear about next. See you next time.